Hey everybody, I have another video here for you today. And I was going to include this site with my Karahan Tepe video, but I decided to make a video on each of these individually. But this is a site that really, there isn't much on YouTube. And I researched this place about a year and a half ago and I did a video. But this site was really a surprise to me in the ancient lost history that really you can't find anywhere. But when I saw this site, I knew it looked strange, it looked odd, and the history of this place has just floored me in what I've researched lately. But this is ancient Sogmatar, or Sogmatar, or Sumatar, or I think it's called Sumatar Harabesi, I think is another name for it. But here we have a very ancient tepe, or tell, and that is simply a man-made hill built up with habitation and ancient structures that have deteriorated. But here you can see the nearby, I think these are called the Tek Mountains, and Karahan Tepe is just to the north. But this is obviously a very strange looking and man-made hill built up over thousands of years of habitation. And I'm just wondering how far back the history goes. Today there is just a tiny little village here. But this is said where the legendary temple of the 7 planets was. And there are strange accounts of a massive shaft going down deep into the earth where people looking into this place could not find the bottom of, and it's a strange story. And I think I go into that a little on the video I made a year and a half ago on this site. But on nearby hilltops here, and let me just align this to north here. But on nearby hilltops, there are smaller temples. And this is just the very nearby hilltop. And you see there are tombs because this place is also, it seems, a very ancient and not so ancient necropolis. Maybe going back a couple thousand years to some point way back in history. But here you see one of these nearby hilltops that have a little temple on it, and they theorize this is the Temple of Venus nearby the main artificial sacred mound. And I think I'm going to read some prayers that mention this because it seems a nearby cave. They venerated a local god coming out of Edessa, Turkey, originating out of the 1st century. He might have been buried here, and more on that later. But this is a very ancient, cool place, and let me just go over to a website or two here. This is Ancient Origins, and I just saw this a couple days ago, and the name where this was found really popped out at me, but it says 5,000-year-old toy chariot unearthed in child tomb in Turkey. And it says, archaeologists have unearthed the 5,000-year-old toy chariot and rattle while excavating an ancient city in Turkey. Experts suggest that the recent discovery could shed light on how children in the Bronze Age used to play. And if that's a 5,000-year-old chariot, well, I got a few questions, but I find that very interesting. It says, the ancient city of Sogmatar yields interesting finds. And it says, International Business Times, and that's who did the story on the ancient site in Egypt. But it says, reports that toys were unearthed as part of an ongoing excavation in the ancient city of Sogmatar, or Sumatar, in southeast Turkey. Previously believed to be one of the oldest known settlements on Earth. It says, the remnants of walls and towers at the hill reveal that the hill town was used as a castle in the 2nd century A.D. And inscriptions here are found about a god they honored at this place in the early 2nd century. And these stonemasons were from nearby Edessa, Turkey. And I think I'm going to have more to say on this in the near future. It says, Assistant Professor Yusuf Albayrak of Turkey's Harran University and a member team of archaeologists that are digging in the area said that Sogmatar was a pagan religious center dating back to the 2nd century A.D. And going on here, this is that nearby temple of Venus on the nearby hill I showed you. And also, if we go over to this website, this is that Temple of Venus on the nearby hilltop, and the stonework here. If that chariot goes back 5,000 years, well, it seems we have many periods of history venerating the site. And by the way, it was to my understanding that the chariot was invented by the Hyksos when they ruled ancient Egypt about 3,800 years ago. That's where I thought the chariot was invented. So if we have a toy chariot here, it seems that this region of Turkey is most likely where they came from, the Hyksos. They came into ancient Egypt, I believe, in the 16th or 17th dynasty and took over and ruled for about 3 centuries. So it seems probably this is where they came from, this area of Turkey, or this region of Turkey. But going over to this website, let me just read a little more about Sogmatar here, or Sumatar. I'm not sure how the pronunciation of this is, like a lot of places. It says, Sumatar is an ancient open-air cultic center located in the Tek-Tek Plateau, 60 kilometers southeast of Urfa, ancient Edessa, and 30 kilometers northeast of Haran. So it is very close to Karahan Tepe. And really, the true age of this, I don't think we have a clue, because even the modern history, the amazing history, which I'm going to go into in some future videos, we have no clue of, and we should, for obvious reasons. It says, the site consists of 7 temples with rock carvings dedicated to the sun, moon, and planets. On the central sacred hill lies a large open-air temple dedicated to Mari Laha, a chief deity. Edessan craftsmen who were evidently skilled stoneworkers built the site in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Reliefs carved into the rocks, usually accompanied by Syriac inscriptions, shed light on the religious and cultural atmosphere of pre-Christian Urfa. And by the way, pre-Christian Urfa is the same as Antioch, one of the cities of Antiochus. There are a few of them, but the one in the Bible that it said Christians first became Christians is in pre-Christian Urfa, ancient Edessa, same place. It says several of its most prominent motifs also appear at nearby cultic sites such as Haran and Palmyra. While Sogmatar seems devoted primarily to the worship of celestial bodies, it also features distinctive evidence of funerary cults with dedicatory tombs, inscriptions detailing hopes for the afterlife of its occupants. It says, although planet worship and funerary cults may seem at first an odd combination, it makes sense in a culture where various local and regional cults might have coexisted, merged, and divided. For instance, at Sumatar, everything is set up around a chief god, Mari Laha. But who exactly is Mari Laha? The deity seems to have been associated at times with the moon god Sin, the chief deity of Haran, at times the Belishaman, the chief deity at Palmyra, both whom were at times associated with Zeus. And I'm going to go much more into this in a future video. It says, at the time, there was a tendency for cultic centers throughout the region to recognize a central godhead, even if it was within or alongside a pantheon of other gods. Some historians believe that this tendency explains, in part, why Urfa was such a fertile growth for monotheism. Sogmatar, in particular, whose height coincided with Urfa's transition to Christianity in the 2nd century, may shed light on the reception of Christianity in the region. Here's a website. I will leave the link below, but here are some reliefs and some inscriptions. And these are Syriac inscriptions coming from the royal family of Edessa, Turkey. Abgar's name is mentioned, and a few others. It seems there was a central deity worshipped, and here, right in the middle of that little town, is a cave, and this is called Pogon's Cave. And I think that is named after the person who discovered it. But this is the inside of the cave, and this is what is found in here. But we have these figures that I guess the Romans came in here early in the 2nd century and they didn't like what they saw and they defaced everything. And they set up shop in this tiny little town in the middle of nowhere for some unknown reason. Now here is a look at the ancient tell, or tepi, at ancient Sogmatar. And really we have no clue what is underneath this mound and what ruins could possibly be found in here and how far back in history this really stretches. Seems when the Hermetic records were moved from Egypt up to this area of the world, certain writers mentioned the Hall of Records in association to this area, and it seemed the whole history of this place has just fallen into myth and legend. But the history here is one that is not widely known. I was fascinated by it, and it seems to stretch back into history, and we have no idea how far back. It's said to be one of the oldest settlements on Earth. It comes from one of the oldest areas of human civilization on Earth. And it seems we have a king that was living here 5,000 years ago that had a toy car made for his child. It seems they were playing 5,000 years ago a lot same way kids are playing today with toy cars. But this is the ancient lost history of Sumatar. Seems many cultures and many different periods of history settled here and lived here and venerated this ancient mound. But maybe I'll have some prayers coming back from this area that are associated with the central deity that mention this mountain and mention the god at Odessa, Turkey. Well, this is the ancient tell, or tepi, in Sumatar, Turkey. Seems the history here stretches back through many cultures. Seems the Sabians were here. And who are the Sabians? Well, they seem to be the ones who evolved out of the area around Göbekli Tepe, just as the dynastic Egyptians evolved out of the area around the original pyramids. But this is not widely known. I'm happy to bring it to you. This is the ancient site of Sumatar. Seems to be a very important site going through many periods of time and cultures through history. This was a venerated ancient mound, just as they are in many different cultures. But this is the area of the world it comes from. Karahan Tepe is right up here. Ancient Haran is right here. Göbekli Tepe is right here. Sanliurfa is right here. Ancient Hope you thought that was interesting, and you all have a very nice day.